Welcome back to the channel. This will be the first wildcard video and podcast of Euro Fantasy in 2024, and I'll be covering the best 50-man squad just like I do in UCL Fantasy every single match day until the end of the competition. Now, in match day 4, you can't use the wildcard or limitless, so that's the only exception. But in match days 2, 3, 5, 6, and 7, I'll be covering the best team using this chip. Let me know your thoughts down in the comment section below, and there are many alternatives and options in this game. There'll be some hidden gems that even I don't really cover in detail, and that's where the conversation continues in the comment section and in the deadline streams. And be sure to tune in on Wednesday the 19th of June for the match day 2 deadline. That will be the plan, to do deadline streams in every single match day, just like I did in the previous Euro tournament in UCL Fantasy, World Cup and FPL as well. Smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Our aim is to get this video to the 200 likes, and let's keep on pushing towards 25,000 subscribers and to reach more goals in the future. Without further ado, let's jump straight into it. Just like the other fantasy formats I cover on this channel, we start off with 100 million in budget, but just like UCL Fantasy and unlike FPL, we do get a 5 million increase, and that happens in match day 4 for the knockout stages when the round of 16 begins. And in terms of price changes, they happen from match day 3 onwards. Once that deadline passes, you'll start to see some price falls and increases, and that's mainly based on player performances and how many fantasy points they've been getting, unlike in FPL where it's mainly based on transfer activity. But the goalkeepers is the first position we're going to cover, and we'll work our way up through the field to the defenders, midfielders and forwards as well. This certainly isn't an ideal pick, but amongst 4.5 million goalkeepers and below, I'd probably go for Lunin for match days 2 and 3. It's still quite close between him and Verbruggen, but the fact that the Netherlands play France doesn't fill me with confidence. Yet on the other hand, Lunin faces Belgium in match day 3, but it's that fixture against Slovakia in match day 2 which is very appealing, and I could see Ukraine keeping a clean sheet. And Lunin, after having a great season for Real Madrid, he helped them lift La Liga and the Champions League. I think it could be a very astute option at 4.5 million. He's also very template with almost 20% ownership, and for Ukraine in just 11 games he has kept 5 clean sheets. But this video and podcast is recorded before the opening game at the Euros, and let's see how they get on. Maybe they'll be a bit shaky and the likes of Lunin and all these Ukrainian defenders won't be that appealing when it comes to making our match day 2 wildcard or limitless squads. But for now, I think he's a good option at 4.5 million, but I do recognise that the Belgium fixture is very difficult indeed. Now, I have a lot more confidence in the second option because the fixtures are there, he has a great record for the national team, and he offers great value at 5 million, and that's going to be Diogo Costa, who is still quite overlooked in the grand scheme of things because most people will be going for Pickford as their 5 million goalkeeper. But I would argue Diogo Costa is even better, and that group is probably the best of any country in terms of top nations with a great chance of winning the Euros. I think Portugal have the easiest group, facing Czech Republic in match day 1, then it's Turkey and Georgia, which is what this wildcard team will be building towards. And I think a Portuguese double up could definitely work defensively, even though Portugal can sometimes be a bit suspect, as they have been in the last 4 matches in the friendlies. A 2-0 loss to Slovenia back in March, and they also lost to Croatia 2-1. But on their day, I think Portugal can beat any team in the world, and I also think they've got some great players in each position. And Diogo Costa can save penalties. He actually set a record for consecutive penalty saves in the Champions League several years ago with Porto, and he was man of the match in the Portuguese Cup final against Sporting. Mark Gay is set to be a nailed-on centre-back for England during the Euros. Now, if he plays poorly against Serbia match day 1, that could change, but I still think he's well ahead of Lewis Dunk and the other centre-back options for England, with the obvious exception of John Stones, who is England's best defender overall. And it's a big shame that Harry Maguire is missing this tournament, but it presents a great opportunity for Mark Gay, a solid centre-back for Crystal Palace, to really stamp his authority and potentially compete with Maguire for this second centre-back slot for England for many years to come. And I think he's a good option against Denmark and then against Slovenia. But I do recognise once again that the matchday 2 fixture this time isn't great because Denmark are a good team. They might struggle for goals at times, but they're very difficult to beat, and it wouldn't surprise me if it was a low-scoring affair and if, for example, Denmark could nick a goal on the counter-attack. And England have looked very shaky in recent international friendlies. Only 1 win out of the last 5 games overall, which included a competitive match, but in the Euros, I'd expect them to start quite strong. They've got a decent group, not the easiest, but overall, I think England are definitely the heavy favourites to advance in top spot with potentially 2 or 3 victories and 1 or 2 clean sheets in the process. And that's why I think Mark Gay at 4.5 million can offer you ball recoveries and clean sheets as well. So I'm very confident about this pick. And you've got Trent Alexander-Arnold, who could be that premium defender of choice for England, and John Stones. But in terms of pure value, I think Mark Gay is the very best that the Three Lions have to offer. Now, the second defender is another budget defender who was quite disappointing in the opener against Scotland. But I'm going for Mittelstadt, who got 3 points overall, and he was quite offensive. He had a good performance, but that own goal by Antonio Rudiger ruined the horse for those with Manuel Neuer, Jonathan Tah, and Mittelstadt. But at 4 million, you can't really complain. And Hungary were very disappointing in their opening match against Switzerland. And if they play that way against Germany, I could see Mittelstadt producing a massive haul. But matchday 3 will be tough against Switzerland, who were very impressive, particularly in that opening 45 minutes against Hungary. Now, the third defender isn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but he was very good for ball recoveries with Barcelona in UCL Fantasy this season, and he might offer better value than Theo Hernandez, saving you 0.5 million in the process, and that's going to be Jules Koundé, but he's not the most nailed-on defender you'll ever see. In the last 10 games or so for France, he has been benched on multiple occasions for the likes of Pavard and Klaus at right back, but Koundé is versatile. He can play as a centre-half and also on the right-hand side, and he was also integral in helping France reach the World Cup final just 2 years ago in Qatar. Theo Hernandez will be more exciting if you have 0.5 million to spare. That's an upgrade you could make, and also you could go for Casteels over Lunin and potentially double up on Belgium defensively if you wanted to do so. But speaking of which, I will be going for a Belgian defender, and Wout Faes at 4 million offers superb value with ball recovery potential, the odd goal or assist here or there, and he's got 2 assists in 15 games for Belgium at the time of this recording. But you also have the likes of Castagna at 5 million, De Kuyper, and potentially the Bast, as it looks like Witsel will be injured for matchday 1, and the same goes for Vertonghen. Those two were the first choice centre-backs to partner Wout Faes, and that just makes him more nailed on with those injuries happening, and you should see a centre-back partnership of the Bast and Wout Faes. Now, the final defender is someone I've covered so many times in all my videos and podcasts. You might be sick of hearing his name, but Joao Cancelo at 6 million is well worth the money. Now, there is the possibility of rotation or of Cancelo being subbed off early, but I think that'll mainly be the case with Nuno Mendes and Diogo Dalot, as I covered in the Best Limitless Team video and podcast. So if you had to pick one way of covering Portugal defensively, you would argue Diogo Costa is number 1. But in terms of defenders and defenders only, Joao Cancelo is the very best pick for Portugal. There are several key differences between the wildcard and the limitless, which I highlight in my chip strategy guide. And with the wildcard, your changes are permanent, but you have to adhere to a 100 million budget in the group stages, unlike the limitless, which only lasts for 1 match day, but you have no budget restrictions whatsoever. And that's why with this wildcard team, you have to make compromises, and I'm going for Trossard over Kevin De Bruyne. So Trossard is less nailed. He's also not as prolific for Belgium as Kevin De Bruyne, but he's been in great form recently for the Red Devils, scoring in the last 2 friendlies and showing great form for Arsenal, both off the bench and also as a starter. And that's why I like Trossard, because even if he were to be benched in matchday 2 or 3, he can come off the bench and score a goal in 5 minutes or even 10 minutes. No matter what it is, I think Trossard can make an immediate impact. And for the Belgian national team, he has 9 goals and 4 assists in 34 matches at the time of this recording, and he's still a differential in the grand scheme of things with around 10% ownership. The fixtures are great. He had a good season for Arsenal, and I think he could be an underrated option at 8 million. And the same goes for his teammate at Arsenal and one of the best players in his position, and that's Bukayo Saka. But there are reports that he's playing for a few injury problems, and you might argue then the likes of Cole Palmer should start over him if that's the case, and that could certainly be true. But Saka has performed week in, week out for England, and for the last 2 years he has won the Player of the Year award, and he scored 11 goals in just 33 games with 7 assists. That's a better record than Bellingham and Foden, and that's why if I'm picking picking between those three, I'm always going to go for Bukayo Saka if he's fully fit and available. The Matchday 2 fixture isn't great against Denmark, but I still think he can perform, and he actually did very well in the previous semi-final against Denmark in Euro 2020. Now, the third midfielder is another young prospect with a lot of potential, but he scored the opening goal of this tournament. He's only 7.5 million, and he's a very template pick. And of course, I'm on about Florian Wirtz, who could be moving to Real Madrid or Barcelona in the years to come, but he had a great season with Bayer Leverkusen, helping them win the Bundesliga and the German Cup unbeaten, and they were so close to a historic treble and going the entire season unbeaten. But regardless, he had a great campaign and he scored once again for Germany. But I say once again, he's only got 2 goals for the national team in 19 games. Not a great record, but I did say this is the tournament I think that could be his breakout on the international stage. And so far, he has delivered, but it was against Scotland, who were beyond woeful in Matchday 1. There are 2 midfielder slots left, and one of them is going to be Bruno Fernandes, who is a very template pick, but there's a good reason for that. Great fixtures, amazing form for Manchester United, and even for Portugal, his record is fairly decent with 22 goals and 20 assists in 67 games before that Matchday 1 fixture against Czech Republic. It's Turkey in Matchday 2 and then Georgia in Matchday 3, which is arguably Portugal's best game on paper. But the final midfielder is a difficult one. I'm going to go for a budget midfielder at 6.5 million, and I'm going for Sudakov because of those fixtures. Now, Matchday 3 isn't great against Belgium, but I do like Slovakia in Matchday 2. And another option which I discussed in the best limitless team is Baumgartner from Austria. He could be a great option to rival Sudakov. There's also Kalinoglu, but I don't like his fixture against Portugal. And I think a lot of these options will have one tough game in either Matchday 2 or 3, and it's between Sudakov or Baumgartner for the 6.5 million midfielder slot in the best wildcard team. I've been a huge advocate for Romelu Lukaku in this Euros tournament because of his record for Belgium, which stands at 85 goals in 115 caps with 17 assists. And he had a decent season for Roma, getting 25 goal contributions, but it's what he does for his country that really stands out. And he does face a lot of low-level opposition in the Euro qualifiers and the World Cup qualifiers, but he does have 2 favourable games in the opening 2 match days. And of course, Matchday 1 isn't relevant by the time you watch this video or listen to this podcast. It's all about Matchdays 2 and 3, and even against Ukraine, you'd probably fancy the likes of Lukaku to get something in that match. And there are some clashes here and there, for example, Lunin versus Lukaku, and that's where downgrading a certain player, maybe even Sudakov, to a cheaper midfielder like Højbjerg could work out for you, because with that extra money, you can then upgrade Lunin to Casteels, and I'd certainly be on board with that, despite the fact that spending 10 million or more on the goalkeepers does seem a bit excessive, and this is obviously going to be the lowest scoring position of the lot. But Romelu Lukaku is right up there with Cristiano Ronaldo, Mbappe and Harry Kane, and I'm going to pick one out of those 3 options, because in order to have this 50-man squad be balanced, you have to make compromises, as I mentioned earlier. And I'm going to go for Harry Kane, who I ranked as the top forward in my best forwards video and podcast. But that's not set in stone, because Mbappe is arguably even better, and I think those 2 will be the favourites to win the Golden Boot or to finish as the top scorer in Euro Fantasy amongst forwards. So I'm going to go for Harry Kane, who is prolific for England, 63 goals in 91 games at the time of this recording. Let's see what he does tonight against Serbia. And he had a terrific season for Bayern Munich, and it doesn't really matter where he's at. He's going to score goals, and he's a great penalty taker as well. But the final forward I'm going for is from Germany. He had a great opener against Scotland, and that's going to be Kai Havertz. But you also have Sudakov, you've got Mitrovic, who's got a great fixture in Matchday 2. Those are certainly worth considering, and if you have the funds and can go for 2 premiums, you've got Cristiano Ronaldo and Mbappe, as I mentioned before. But this forward 3 offers you balance, and it also enables you to have a very strong midfield as well. And in terms of alternatives in other positions, Musiala over Saka is certainly something to consider, especially if you back Germany to score a lot of goals, and you might expect Denmark to be a banana skin game, or England, who haven't been great recently, and that attacking double up might be a bit too far considering their recent form. But there are certainly a few things you can change to your liking, and I think one of the best things to do is possibly upgrade Lunin to a Casteels if possible. But There is always going to be compromises with the wildcard. On the Limitless, it's much easier to build the best team on paper because you have no budget restrictions. On the wildcard, you also have to think about match day 3, and match day 4 and beyond isn't relevant because we get unlimited transfers for the round of 16. So it's all about match days 2 and 3 on the wildcard. Now you can save this chip for match day 5, which I discuss in the chip strategy video and podcast. My current plan is to use the wildcard in either match day 3 or 5. I'll be leaving my options open, but I have to say match day 2 has some tough fixtures for some of the best nations, yet one of these chips can pay dividends because you'll be able to target the plum fixtures and be able to maneuver the group stages in the best way possible. The last thing to talk about is the captaincy, and as always, you sort it out by date. You don't have 5 shots of the captaincy as you did in match day 1, only 4, just the 4. It's going to be very, very difficult. But on the 19th of June, I would go for a German attacker, and I think Florian Wirtz would be my top pick. On the 20th of June, I think Harry Kane stands out as the best captaincy option on that day. Now on the 21st, it doesn't look great, and I'll be the first to admit it. Jules Koundé or Sudakov are your best options, maybe even Lunin in goal. I'd probably go for Sudakov. I tend to favour attackers, even in Euro Fantasy where you have ball recovery points, and that could make the likes of Koundé very viable options in this fantasy format. And then on the 22nd, you are sport for choice with Lukaku, Trossard or Bruno Fernandes. And I think I'd rank it Lukaku first, Bruno second, and Trossard third for that day. But always back your gut. You might even want to go for Saka over Harry Kane or change things to your liking. So this best wildcard team is all down to personal preference, and I've set a foundation for those that are playing the wildcard, and there are a few things you can tweak here and there so that it's your wildcard team and you can get as many points as possible for match days 2 and 3. Thank you very much for watching this video and listening to this podcast. If you enjoyed it or found it useful, then be sure to smash the like button and subscribe if you're new. Let's get this video to over 200 likes and let's keep on pushing towards 25,000 subscribers and reach new goals in the future. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram, DylanRCM, and check all the other links in the description below for my Patreon, the Championships Discord server, Euro Fantasy League, and Spotify. Leave a 5-star review on my podcast. It goes a long way to supporting the channel. I wish you all the best of luck for match day 1, 2, and the rest of the tournament, and I'll see you next time.